Well, my channel's basically dead at this point. I guess a science project is a good reason to revive it. Now, what exactly is Klinefelter Syndrome? Well, to put it simply, Klinefelter Syndrome, also known as 47XXY, is a condition in which a male is born with an extra 23rd chromosome, an extra X chromosome that is. Since the male now carries 3 copies of a chromosome as opposed to just 2, that is XXY as opposed to just XY, this condition is labeled a trisomy, more specifically trisomy 23. It's named after endocrinologist Harry Klinefelter and occurs in 1 out of every 660 men. Now that we know what Klinefelter syndrome is, that begs the question, how does this condition occur? As we have discussed before, Klinefelter is the result of a male being born with XXY sex chromosomes. Since a person is conceived when an egg cell and sperm cell meet, the likely culprit is one of the two. The way either cell type got the extra chromosome is likely due to an error in meiosis, where either cell type split and one got to keep both chromosomes while the other was left with none. The chances of this happening with either eggs or sperm is the same, although while researching this, I unfortunately couldn't pin down a specific number or rate. Interestingly enough, however, the likelihood of Klinefelter developing in a boy is slightly higher if the mother is over 35 years old. Setting that aside, let's discuss how Klinefelter syndrome affects its carriers. Now, from what I could gather, how the syndrome affects you depends on your age. When it comes to babies and toddlers, their testes don't drop into their scrotum, they take longer to learn how to sit up, crawl, walk, and talk, and are generally quieter than others. Additionally, they're born with a condition where the urethra, the tube that carries urine and sperm out of the body, is on the underside of their penis as opposed to the tip. That's like having to pee out of the blowhole of a flute. Anyways, when it comes to children, they have social issues, problems with speaking about their emotions, are shyer than others, and have a harder time learning. When it comes to teenagers, they're taller than expected, take longer to grow facial and body hair, and have weaker muscles, broader hips, larger breasts, a smaller torso, a smaller penis, and small firm testicles. And finally, when it comes to adults, they have a low sex drive, can't have children, and have issues with getting or keeping an erection. Now, some of you might find these symptoms very similar to those of yourself or your personality, and that's perfectly fine. But it's still important to understand that you shouldn't diagnose yourself. If you're concerned that you or a loved one could potentially have Klinefelter syndrome, consult a doctor. They'll give you much more helpful advice about the condition than a kid researching a genetic disorder for a science project. Moving on, it's important to note that not all cases of Klinefelter syndrome are the same. For one, there's mosaic Klinefelter, in which only some of a boy's cells contain the extra chromosome, which lessens the symptoms. Additionally, there are so-called variants of Klinefelter, in which 3 or more X chromosomes are in a boy's cells, with each additional chromosome worsening the effects of the condition. Now, we already know what the symptoms of Klinefelter are, but what are the long-term effects? From what I've researched, I can conclude that people with Klinefelter may have a slightly higher chance of anxiety, depression, certain cancers, heart and lung disease, autoimmune or hormone gland issues, and osteoporosis. Even despite all these risks and issues, people with Klinefelter tend to live happy and healthy lives with proper treatment. Speaking of which, treatments of Klinefelter include plastic surgery to decrease breast size, testosterone replacement therapy to boost testosterone levels, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, kinda just a lot of therapies, you know. It's never too late to treat Klinefelter syndrome, but the earlier it is, the better. Thanks for watching this episode of As Far As I Know. If it does well enough, I'll make this into a series and keep the videos coming. But for now, take care. Oh, and in case anyone asks, as far as I know, I do not have Klinefelter syndrome.